is a presentation of how to demonstrate the professional standards 1 to 5, the QCT Queensland College of Teachers professional standards. And the first 5 of these deal with teaching and learning. So the first QCT standard talks about designing and implementing learning activities which are engaging and flexible, and which also cater to both individuals and groups. So I've chosen 3 pieces of learning and teaching that I conducted during my practicum. And the first one was a philosophy lesson, and I thought this was a good example of both a group activity, for it was quite a large number of students who were involved in this, and also an example of an activity which got the kids' interest, being given the choice and the opportunity to voice their own opinions about the issue that we were talking about. And in terms of being flexible or being adaptable, I chose the persuasive writing task that I conducted for English, and the students were to discuss something that they wanted to change about the school, but they had free range as to what they wanted to address. And finally, in terms of an individual activity, I chose the mathematics exam paper, which I designed as an example of a piece of assessment which was used to conduct the progress of each student. And so an individual-based assessment was the best way to do that. The second QCT standard is the one that deals with the different subject areas, or 3 of the main areas of teaching, which are language, literacy, and numeracy. And for the language, again, the philosophy lesson was certainly one which covered these aspects, being one which had the students listen while I was reading the book to them, and also when it came to them responding to questions, very much in the style of philosophy lessons. It was the person who held the object was the one who was talking, so that turn-taking convention was obviously helping them with their language ability. And with the persuasive writing, there was obviously a focus on literacy, and in this case we looked at a number of aspects of persuasive writing that are used, including emotive language and also the use of rhetorical questions to have a reader think about what you are telling them. And finally, in terms of numeracy, obviously the mathematics exam paper was a good option for demonstrating this particular aspect, and this one talked about both addition and subtraction of positive and negative numbers, as well as the comparison of those numbers. The third QCT standard of the original 10 standards talks about being intellectually challenging. And the 3 pieces of work that I have been talking about so far all did give opportunities for students to think a little bit more deeply, especially the philosophy being in its essence the study of things that we don't know, or to look deeply at things that we think that we do know. But philosophy gave an opportunity to ask deeper questions of the students. So the book was looking at difference. The book, I will talk more about that in the next QCT standard, which is diversity. But one of the questions that it asked was, when you look in a mirror, can you see yourself? Is that all there is to you? And in terms of other people's perceptions of you, are they the same for everyone? And so getting the children to think more deeply was what was required through that particular lesson. And also in the persuasive writing, it was not just being able to use emotive language or to try to convince readers by using a lot of rhetorical questions, but it was about having a logical argument which readers could follow. Again, calling on students to use more deep, more high-level thinking. And finally, in the numeracy, one of the questions actually gave the answer to the students, and they had to work backwards. They had to design a question to suit that answer. Again, that kind of unconventional problem-solving based thinking, which is a part of intellectually challenging learning. And the fourth QCT standard, yeah, as I said, focuses on experiences that value diversity. So with the philosophy, it worked very well because this was one which was explicitly teaching about difference. And the particular book was The Bunyip of Berkeley Creek. And as you can imagine, the bunyip was a creature which was different to the other creatures. But as we found throughout the book and through our discussions later, after we had read it, we found that it is our differences, in fact, that actually unite us. They're not something that should cause us to think that people are bad or that we can't relate to them, but instead we should see that everyone has differences, and that is something that can be used as a benefit once we understand it properly. And the final QCT standard in the section of teaching and learning is number 5, and that one deals with this idea of assessing and reporting constructively. And the mathematics exam paper was a very good example of that, because this gave me an opportunity to look at both the percentage, I suppose, of answers that the students were giving right or correctly or incorrectly, but also to try to deduce and try to interpret the process which they had used. And often I could see that they were misapplying a particular formula or a particular way of solving a problem, and I could note that so that the student would be able to learn from that feedback, but also the teacher too would be able to would know that and would be able to look back on that and realize that in future this particular method needs to be taught more explicitly or in a different way so that the student can understand it properly. So just like this, I have found through my practicums and through my education experience that these standards are not just to keep me in line as a teacher, although of course that's principally the idea behind them, but they do actually improve my performance and help me to do even better in the future. So just as by evaluating students' work, I can see how they can improve and also how I can improve. With all of the standards, I am able to get an understanding of whether the students are responding well to this lesson and whether I can improve or whether they can improve. And so teaching and learning becomes this mutual process of constantly improving what I am doing. So I hope that you have enjoyed this presentation of my demonstration of the QCT Standards 1 to 5, and I hope to put these into practice more and more as I continue in my educational journey. Thank you.